Hello and welcome to Planet Pulse on Firstpost. The Earth is constantly changing, and in recent years, for the worse. Summers are getting hotter and winters harsher. Rising sea levels, floods, drought, wildfires, and torrential rain have been disrupting lives across continents. The fight against climate change is needed now more than ever. On this show, we bring you all the top stories on the climate crisis, its causes, its brutal effects, and the warriors helping fight the menace. War is tearing through Ukraine's cities and now its climate. For the first time in history, a nation is preparing to charge an aggressor for the carbon cost of conflict, with Kyiv planning a $44 billion claim against Russia for the emissions unleashed since the invasion. Fires, bombardments, fuel-hungry machines, and shattered infrastructure have turned Ukraine's environment into a hidden battlefield. Scientists say the war has produced over 230 million tons of climate-warming gases, scorching land and choking skies. And as Ukraine prepares this unprecedented climate case, another front is opening in the conflict. Here's our report.
Ukraine is preparing a new kind of battlefield. This one has no tanks, no trenches, no sirens. It's a fight over the climate cost of war, and Kyiv is sending Russia the bill. For the first time ever, a nation plans to charge an aggressor for the carbon damage of conflict. Ukraine says the war has choked its land, burned its forests, and filled its skies with millions of tons of greenhouse gases. And now it wants $44 billion in compensation.
We are trying to identify the legal approaches, legal mechanism, how we could make Russia accountable for all this damage. So basically, we already started this job, and I believe it's a matter not only by Ukraine, because the consequences of these damages goes far beyond Ukraine.
Experts say the war has produced around 237 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent gases. That's the yearly pollution output of Ireland, Belgium, and Austria combined. But the sources keep multiplying. Tanks burn fuel day and night, factories produce ammunition around the clock, explosions rip open soil and concrete. Reconstruction adds its own burden, making up 27% of emissions. Attacks on power plants and energy depots add 8% more. Even refugees contribute 2% as they move in and out of the country. And then come the fires. Last year, 92,000 hectares burned, more than double the usual amount. Dry weather and constant fighting made firefighting almost impossible.
What also makes it unique is the environmental component which is built in, and including then also the impact on the climate. So this is really, I mean, Ukraine in that sense is really blowing the trail for many issues, I would say.
Ukraine's climate claim relies on a key figure, $185. That's the social cost of carbon per ton from a 2022 Nature study. Multiply that by the wartime emissions and Russia's climate bill crosses $42 to $44 billion. Ukraine will file the claim through a Council of Europe process that already holds 70,000 war-damaged submissions. Frozen Russian assets may one day fund the payouts, and Moscow for now has not committed.
And because this would also be the first time actually that a state would be held accountable for emissions as a result of an unlawful act, which is the act of aggression in this case.
Meanwhile, the war continues its daily rhythm of destruction. Now the world watches as Ukraine asks a bold question. If war heats the planet, shouldn't someone pay for the warming? And the answer, whatever it becomes, may reshape how future wars are judged, priced, and punished.
Our next story is from Iran. When a nation begins to pray for rain, you know the crisis has crossed a line. In Iran, that line is now a crack in the earth, widening every single day. Desperate for relief, Tehran has launched a dramatic gamble. Aircraft firing chemicals into the clouds, hoping to squeeze rain from an empty sky. Cloud seeding is part science, part leap of faith. And right now, Iran needs both. Our next report takes you inside a nation fighting for water, praying for rain, and racing against a drought that refuses to end.
Iran is holding its breath and looking to the sky, because when rain becomes a miracle, every cloud becomes a story. When a country begins to measure its future by the promise of rain clouds, you know the crisis has reached a breaking point. And right now, Iran is living on a countdown, waiting for the sky to change its mind. Across northern Tehran, imams stand before crowded mosques whispering prayers for rain, and ordinary citizens look upwards, wondering if the next cloud might finally be the one that saves them. Iran is battling a drought so severe, its president has publicly warned that the capital may one day have to be evacuated.
The reality is that we have no choice to relocate the capital. It is a necessity. We cannot overwhelm this region with more population and construction. We can develop, but we cannot solve its water problem.
Faced with the possibility, the government has turned to a dramatic and controversial solution: cloud seeding. On November the 15th, an aircraft loaded with special equipment took off for the Lake Urmia basin. Cloud seeding involves injecting chemical salts, including silver or potassium iodide, into clouds via aircraft or through generators on the ground. Water vapour can then condense more easily and turn into rain. This operation will continue through May, the end of Iran's traditional rainy season. Lake Urmia itself is a symbol of everything Iran stands to lose. Just 20 years ago, it was West Asia's largest lake, lined with hotels, beachside restaurants and boat tours. Today, those boats sit abandoned on cracked ground. Experts say this crisis didn't begin with climate change, but it has now been supercharged by it. Years of mismanagement, illegal wells, and inefficient agriculture drained Iran's water reserves faster than nature could replenish them. Now, rainfall is 89% below average, and Tehran has received only 1 millimetre of rain all year, the lowest level in a century. Cloud seeding has been tried around the world. The UAE has used it in recent years to help address water shortages. The United States, China, Australia and various European nations such as France and Spain have tried the technique to combat air pollution. Recently, the technique was tried in India as well. Sometimes the technique works. An experiment in Wyoming showed precipitation rising between 5 and 15% after cloud seeding. On the other hand, sometimes it fails completely, as seen recently in India's attempt to use it against Delhi's pollution. Meanwhile, the crisis in Iran seems to deepen. 32 major dams in and around Tehran are operating at less than 5% capacity. Authorities have reduced nighttime water pressure. Households and businesses face fines for using too much water. Bottled water prices are climbing, and even rationing has begun. Adding to this, snow which usually blankets Tehran in November has nearly disappeared, with a 98% drop in cover compared to last year. Yet, in an almost cruel twist, western Iran has suddenly flooded. Videos show an overflowing river in Ilam province after heavy downpours. Meteorologists have now issued flood warnings in 6 provinces and expect rain in 18 of Iran's 31 regions. For Iran, the coming weeks carry the weight of a nation's hopes. As clouds gather, drift and scatter, millions wait for the moment when the sky finally breaks and rain becomes more than a prayer.
And finally, as Europe confronts a fast intensifying climate crisis, one country is taking a decisive and controversial turn in its energy strategy. The Czech Republic is betting big on nuclear power, unveiling plans for new reactors it says are essential to cutting emissions and keeping the lights on. It's a move that puts Prague at the center of Europe's debate over how to power a greener, more resilient future. Here's a report.
As the climate clock ticks louder and Europe scrambles for cleaner, steadier power, the Czech Republic is placing a massive bet on a once controversial source: nuclear energy. The country has unveiled plans to build 2 nuclear reactors at its Dukovny plant, a move it says is essential for slashing carbon emissions and keeping up with soaring electricity demand. Each reactor is expected to generate over 1,000 megawatts of power, enough to light up hundreds of thousands of homes.
I think that nuclear power should account for around 50% to 60% of the Czech Republic's energy mix by 2050. Personally, I tend to think it will be around 60%, possibly slightly above, and renewable sources will complement the rest of the energy mix.
It's a project with ambitions far beyond a simple expansion. Prague has included an option for 2 more reactors, signaling a long-term strategy to double its nuclear output and cut reliance on fossil fuels. The price tag? Nearly $25 billion.
Nuclear energy is an integral part of the Czech energy mix. However, it is essential to note that the nuclear reactors currently under construction will not begin supplying electricity until the second half of the next decade, assuming all goes well.
Energy experts largely agree. An expert said nuclear would be an integral part of the future energy mix, though renewables from wind farms and solar parks must grow alongside it.
The Czech Republic is likely to phase out its coal-fired power plants after 2030. That is why it is also crucial to exploit the potential of renewable sources in the Czech energy mix. In recent years, we have managed to restart the development of solar power plants in the Czech Republic. However, we are still lagging in the development of wind power plants. There is considerable potential here that could help the Czech energy sector during the winter, when photovoltaics produce less. These 2 sources complement each other very well seasonally.
Across Europe, this shift is already visible. With climate deadlines looming and power grids under strain, countries once skeptical of atomic energy are back at the table. Belgium and Sweden have scrapped plans to phase out nuclear energy. Denmark and Italy are reconsidering. And Poland is set to join a club of 12 nuclear-friendly EU nations after striking a deal with US-based Westinghouse to build 3 reactors. The European Union has given the trend an important green light by including nuclear in its classification of environmentally sustainable economic activities. Brussels has opened doors to financing a lifeline for nations like the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and nuclear champion France. But not everyone is convinced. Environmental groups such as Friends of the Earth argue that nuclear is still too costly, too slow, and diverts resources away from renewable alternatives. And despite decades of operation, the Czech Republic still lacks a permanent storage site for spent nuclear fuel, an issue critics say cannot be ignored in the rush to expand. There's also the matter of geography and history. The Dukovny and the Temelin plants sit close to the Austrian border, a country that remains fiercely anti-nuclear ever since the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. The relationship has been tense before. In 2000, protests over the Temelin plant sparked a political crisis that even blocked border crossings for weeks. Today, Austria's lower house of parliament has already rejected the Czech Republic's plan for small modular reactors. Yet, for Prague, the climate crisis leaves little room for hesitation. As Europe bakes under record heat waves and emissions targets grow sharper, the Czech Republic is doubling down on what it sees as proven, carbon-free backbone for its energy future. For better or worse, nuclear power is back in Europe's climate playbook. And in the Czech Republic, it's set to play a starring role.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching Planet Pulse. I am Gushin Garland and we'll see you right back here next week. Until then, stay informed and stay tuned to Firstpost.
was a revolutionary. I became a ruler. I claimed to protect my people. I terrorized them instead. I built palaces. I started wars. I lost everything. Some called me a defender of Arab pride. History remembers me as a dictator. Who am I?